what you find invariably is that the little guy is not the one you should worry about. It's the big guy, the people behind it, because it's a whole ring of people caught up behind this little guy who owns this sex ring and who provides the resources for them to go into the countryside and recruit these young children, take them from their parents. They pay the parents. The parents don't even realize that they're selling their children into sexual slavery. There's a book out there that you need to read. It's called The Heavens Are Telling. You need to read that book, The Heavens Are Telling, right? And I read this book years ago and interviewed the author, and I bawled because it was my first introduction to international sex tourism, and I could not believe for the life of me that this was really happening. I wanted to believe in the purity of everybody, that everybody is pure and have pure intentions, and that nobody is doing anything nefarious. I just wanted to believe that, but unfortunately, the world is not structured like that. There are people who have proclivities that they find themselves that they have to attend to, and the ways in which they seek to procure their relief and their forms of entertainment for these proclivities leave the rest of us aghast. But it leaves the victims. It leaves the victims untended. It leaves the victims uncared for and damaged for life. They're damaged physically. In one story that I read, the young girls who had been taken and placed in a shelter were so severely traumatized after having repeated abortions that by the time they're 17 or 18, they are done. They can't have sex anymore. Their bodies can't make children anymore. They have had so many abortions, their bodies are finished, and they are now traumatized. They never went to formal schooling because they were extracted and taken from the countryside when they were very young, and they don't know how to survive. So were it not for the shelters and the generosity of individuals who have gone into those communities to help them, and even so, it is very difficult to convince the children to even come out of the sexual slavery. You do know that. It's very difficult because they're so used to people saying, I will help you. Every man whom they have had sex with promises them that he will take them to America or Europe. And he has no intention of doing that, because over here, he's Mr. CEO, he's Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Business Owner, right? He has no intention of bringing that stuff here. He doesn't want anybody to know that that's what he does. First of all, it's illegal. He will go to jail for it. Secondly, he doesn't really want you to know that that's what he's engaging in, but it is what it is. And my friends, this sex tourism that is sex trafficking, because it's the trafficking in persons. It's using force, because the children are forcibly taken from their parents. They are taken either by force or it's fraud. So they promise them something that doesn't happen. They're coercion. So it fits the description of the Trafficking in Persons Act, which is the federal law that governs these activities here in the United States. So when those three elements are involved, it's called trafficking. And sex trafficking is the exploitation. Trafficking is the exploitation of people. Taking people under false pretenses. You're going to help them, but you're not going to help them. How many of us are guilty of that? You say you're going to help somebody, but you don't. That's a whole different thing. You know, when you just be a frenemy, you know, your friend is an enemy, so you call them frenemy, right? That's what my daughter says. So they say they're going to do something for you, but they kind of sabotage in the meantime so it doesn't get done. Yeah, right? But they're still pretending that they're with you and they're your friend, but they're a friend enemy, right? My children are schooling me on that one, right? But this is not what this is. This is exploitation of people. This is people, grown people, adults, taking advantage of vulnerable people that they couldn't do here in the United States. If they did that here, they would be subject to the laws that prevail. And this is why we have to have laws. Because if we didn't have laws, God forbid that my child or yours could be laid carelessly. These folks would take up a child and pick up a child, and like that man in Ohio, from Ypsilanti who was walking around the hotel complex, the resort complex, looking for children. And just, if had it not been for parents who were alert and astute, they would never have realized what he was doing. He was in the business of recruiting. Next thing, he would have taken them back to his room to, under some false pretense. That's the fraud right there. To tell them that, well, you're going to stay with my daughter while he performs sex acts on them. But God, say but God, people, because I kid you not, I'm still, there's still an element of the Jamaican in me. They try to excoriate it and kind of scrub it out and get it up, but there's still that element in me that's untamed when it comes to someone violating any female family member of mine, especially male or female, any vulnerable family member of mine. But God, say but for the grace of God. Say it. I kid you not. And so when we look at sex tourism, it has become an area now that we kind of have to look at, because we're like, well, you have a guy who works in your corporation, and you notice that he goes to Thailand and Cambodia and these places I just mentioned, Costa Rica, Brazil, and so on, more than once per year. Why does he like to travel? I'm very wary of people who like to travel to some parts of the world. I recently was trying to connect with someone, and I found out that they travel frequently. Now, they're female. Problem is, they're not married, but they travel frequently, and one of their favorite places to go to was Africa. So at first, I was like, well, there is a little neo-colonialism there. Maybe they like the feeling of feeling superior, so they take it to other parts of the world. But I'm like, how old is this person? I wanted to look a little bit closer. I'm like, so your specialty is there? Okay, I see you, right? I'm like, indeed, that's what that is? Okay. Do you see what I mean? Sex tourism. Something to think about. Something to think about as you go through your day. Something to think about as you even sit down and talk to people around you who are friends. How often they travel, overseas. Some people are always getting on a plane. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. Some people are always getting on a plane. Watch their destinations where they're going. Because some people will create diversions. I mean, the government is never going to catch anybody, because first of all, the government doesn't care about where its citizens really go, right? You're free to move about the country, move about the world, right? So the government is not interested in that. But the government is interested in the commerce. So if you're moving goods and services, they're probably watching you, right? That's an activity that falls under their umbrella, right? But if you're just traveling, they're not really caring about that. But you yourself, if you have a brother, a cousin, a sister, right? A brother especially, and he has a family back here, or sometimes they get divorced. The rate of divorce is so high. No wonder. Because they're always getting on a plane to go somewhere. Why do they need to be married? Why are they going to stay married when they have this proclivity to have sex with people who are vulnerable, who can't ever stop them, who can never tell them? And especially in today's world, the world we live in today, that is cloaked in the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, and men are feeling like, I'm caged in, so I want to have sex, but I can't have sex. Yes, you can have sex. The law never said you shouldn't have sex with consenting adults. The law never said you shouldn't. The law never said you can't. The law gives strict definitions about it, because it's to protect all of us. Because while you, a normal guy, is just, man, I'm just living, I'm with my girl, I'm with my wife, I protect my family. That's you. Thank God for you. But there are other people who are not like you. There are other people for whom this is sport. And this is activity that they engage in. And this is activity that they somehow participate in, glorify in, and perhaps they enjoy a level of satisfaction out of it. And you're sitting there like, wow, sex tourism, whoever thought? So there is transnational sex tourism, which is what occurs between countries. So somebody leaves the United States and they go to Cambodia, for instance. And then there is domestic sex tourism where, folks just get on a plane and just go to Vegas and say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Now, if it is happening between consenting adults, who cares? Right? Consenting adults means it's devoid of rape and forcible actions. So there's no sexual assault or rape there, because that's two people saying, hey, guy says hey to girl and girl says hey back. They're getting it on. Good. That's what we want, right? We want people to be consenting. But where people are forced and where people are pushed or where they're exploited, that's where the concern has to happen. And that, my friends, is what it's all about. I mean, just think of these countries. And I want to tell you the countries because people think that, listen to this. Brazil is considered to have the worst child sex trafficking record after Thailand. UNICEF notes that sexual activity is often seen as a private matter, making communities reluctant to intervene in these cases, right? The US has strict domestic laws that hold accountable anybody who lives within the borders, who travels abroad for the purpose of engaging in illicit conduct with a minor. As of 2009, sex tourism and human trafficking remain fast-growing industries, of course. But you hear that, though. The U.S. has strict laws. So if you go over there and you travel abroad for the purpose of engaging in illicit conduct with a minor, the laws, they will find you and they will get you. So the laws do prevail, right? So the countries, again, the countries where this is most prevalent, my God in heaven. Lord Jesus, help us. The countries where this is most prevalent, I'm going to read them to you. And I'm like, oh Lord, I don't know what to say, but here it is. The countries where these are popular destinations are Brazil, so watch out, people who love going to Brazil, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, particularly Amsterdam, Kenya, Colombia, Thailand, the Philippines, Cambodia, Cuba, and Indonesia, particularly Bali. Southern Europe, Greece, Italy, Cyprus, Spain, and Portugal. The Caribbean, led by Jamaica, Barbados, and the Dominican Republic. Brazil again, Egypt, Turkey, and this particular place in Thailand called Phuket, which was actually written off in the book I'm telling you about, The Heavens Are Telling. Gambia, Senegal, and Kenya in Africa. Bulgaria, Tunisia, Lebanon, Morocco, Jordan, Azerbaijan, Fiji, Colombia, and Costa Rica. Do you see a theme emerging? What's the theme? Vulnerable peoples, places that are known for economic disturbances, places that are known to have exposed constantly to social and cultural upheavals, where there is instability, political instability leads to social displacement. Social displacement means there's not enough money in the economy to provide goods and services for all the citizens of the country, thereby leaving a vast majority of the population vulnerable. Now you set the stage for sex trafficking. So the United States does have laws about this, right? So if they find that you're traveling from the US to go engage in illicit behavior with a minor, when you come back, they will deal with you, right? We had to put some control over it because this has gone on for too long. And it was affecting the image of America abroad. Plus, it's wrong to exploit people and to have sex with children. And it was just damaging to certain American interests, right? And we're not talking about people like the Epstein visa. Everybody talking about the Epstein visa, how that was a broad form and a good representation of sex tourism. Jeff Epstein engaged in an activity where he brought people into the country using his wealth, right? So he brought them in on planes. They had no formal entry into the system. He brought them in on planes for the sole purpose of having sex. Vulnerable people so he specialized in Europe, Southern Europe. He specialized in Southern Europe. So he'd bring people in from Southern Europe, brought them into the country, used them, and sold them. He literally sold them to his friends. So his friends were paying a fee. That's why they can't tell you the origin of his wealth. When anybody can't tell you the origin of their wealth, you know that it was not obtained by traditional methods. They can't tell you how he made money or how he acquired so much, because he was bringing in sex slaves and people were paying for it. It's called the Epstein visa. So he brought them in on his plane. They came off and it paid off everybody apparently. People just come in and they disappear literally. Then they go do whatever they need to do. Some of them stayed here, some didn't. You have to wonder what happened to those who perhaps rebelled. And this is going on and on and on, because wherever there are disparities in income and economics, there's going to be what? Some form of exploitation. Somebody is going to pay the price, right? And so I want to leave you with this thought. I want to leave you with the idea behind it, that the reason, like I said before, this was a difficult subject for me to tackle. I did not want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it, but I can't ignore the fact that even at this very moment, it's happening. It's happening right now. That somewhere in Cambodia, in Thailand, in Gambia, in Kenya, in Senegal, in Brazil, in Colombia, in Costa Rica, somewhere there is someone having sex with a child who has the affluence and the means to get on a plane, pay the ticket, pay for the hotel where they're going, and pay for the means to have sex with that child. And leaving that child destroyed, riddled with sexually transmitted disease, destroyed forever. People, some of the stories I've read where the young child, their inner systems, their fallopian tubes are damaged as a result of these activities. And no one cares. Nobody cares. Right? No one cares. The children are vulnerable. They're economically vulnerable. They're extracted. They're paid fees. And I've described in detail how it works. Right? The ringleader, he goes into the countryside. He convinces the country people that their child is going to work. It happens everywhere. China kind of shut it down. You can't just go into China and do that kind of stuff because they'll shoot you. Right? China kind of just control that. Doesn't mean they don't do it internally, but you can't just go in there and do it. They shut it down. And the day we become economically vulnerable in America is the day when it will happen to us also. So we got to be careful. This is why we have to shut it down so that that never happens in the United States of America, so that it never happens that people in other countries think that they can come to America and take American children and destroy them like they're doing everywhere else. Yes, we're wrong for doing that. We should never do that. But at the same time, we got to protect the United States and make sure that our children living within these borders, our children who are here, are protected from any kind of ravage that could emanate from any kind of transnational sex tourism, whether it's domestic where some guy drives from Ohio to Michigan or Michigan to Ohio, or whether just some person somewhere in the world at some point thinks that it's okay, let's just go to America and we can just take these children off the streets and just pay them so we can have sex with them. We gotta shut it down. For all I know, it could be happening right here, because right now Detroit is a border city. For all I know, this could be something where people are coming across the border from Canada. I'm not accusing Canadians of anything. I'm just saying, for all I know, this could happen, right? And people just come across the border. Let's say we get into a situation where America is no longer the might and power that we are today. We're a powerful nation, yeah. We are enjoying the moment. Yeah, are we on top? Yes, we sit solidly on top of the planet. We dictate to everybody, bow down before me, I'm the king. Right? That's what we say. Yeah, you better bow. We are it. But what if there comes a day and time when we're no longer the it, when we no longer have the military power that's backing us? Because our strength comes from the power of our military. Our strength comes from the power of our economy. the power of our dollar. So we dictate to everybody else what you do and what you don't do. Make no mistake about it. When you are the emperor, that is what happens. America is a modern empire, and I love it. Why? Because it means that my children are protected. So nobody can ever jump on a plane, come from somewhere else, and come over here thinking they can have access to my children. You better think again. Ain't gonna happen. So as long as, this is why we have to be aware of these things, so that we create barriers ourselves. We create boundaries. Teach your children, folks. Teach your children stranger danger. Tell your children, you don't just leave your children to run around in a mall by themselves. Come on, people, be aware. You young parents out there, you have your children, and sometimes I wonder, you're so caught up in your phones, so caught up being with your friends, that you send the children, you're sitting in a restaurant that is crowded, and you send your children to the bathroom by themselves. It's called parenting. There is no off time. The off time is when they're 18 and they exit stage left to go to college. That's your off time. In between now and then, you're vigilant. You're on the job. That is the job of being a parent. I see so many young parents at the mall. The children are way over the other side running. And I'm like, for the love of God, help me, Jesus. Because you got to pay more attention. Don't just send your child. Sometimes, I just need a break and I just want an off time. Who told you that when you signed up to become a parent? You thought it was just about the gender reveal party? You thought it was just about showing people how great you look pregnant and you have a baby bump? That baby bump becomes a human being and a real person. It's not a doll. They need to be cared for and monitored and loved and to be kept safe. That's an important part of parenting, right? So pay attention to these things, and you have to be aware of it, because everyone doesn't think like you. So when you think, oh, I'm just so tired and I just need an off day, and you just let them go run next door and play, you don't know who next door is videotaping them. You don't know who next door is touching them inappropriately. They probably won't tell you, and you won't know, because you're so busy just having a sip of wine, because it's just such a terrible day at work. You do not get that luxury anymore. The minute you become a parent, you know what it becomes? It's vigilance. If you're going to relax, they're upstairs in their bedroom. And they're down the hall in their bedroom. That's your off time. You're raising them up. You teach them to go to bed at 8 o'clock every evening. You get home by 6. Dinner, homework, bed. Dinner, say it again. Dinner, homework, bed. Dinner, homework, bed. So at 8 o'clock, between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, you get 2 hours to be yourself. You get to do your housework, walk around your house, spend some one-on-one time with your partner. That's your off time. You teach your children, now look, this is how we're going to do this. You start telling them from they're young. So many parents just leave it like free willy. You can't be free willy. Give them boundaries. If they're going over next door, don't go in anybody's house. Let me see you on the front lawn. If they invite you in the basement, don't go down there. Set the boundaries so they know. Because the first thing little Johnny's going to come back over here and tell, oh, Mr. John told me he invited me down into the basement, Mommy. And then you go over there and Mr. John is no longer Mr. John when you're done with him, because that's just what happens. But do you see what I mean? Set the boundaries. When they go over to grandma's house, play in the living room so grandma can see you. You're not telling them to go play with stuff, go look for guns, weapons, and all kinds of stuff. Give them boundaries. Just think about it. Think about how wild of a child you were. And that should give you some idea. You know what? I better tell him not to do this because I used to do that. It is what it is. Set some boundaries for our children. And make sure that we work to protect our children who live within these borders. So other people don't think it's okay to ever come to Michigan or whatever state you live in to participate because they see your kid walking around the zoo and just for a second you turn your back and 2 seconds. You ever hear parents say that sometimes? He was just right here. I just turned my back for 2 seconds. It was less than 20 seconds. You ever hear parents say, I'm just so overwhelmed, I just needed a break and I just turned my back for 2 seconds. Let us work to ensure that we protect our children. We need to be a village. Folks, you're out there seeing some child wandering. Stay there with the child and call 911. Just say, honey, we're going to stay right here till we find your mommy. Okay, we're calling the police. 911, I have a little kid here. I'm at such and such a location. We can't find his mommy. Would you send somebody over here? Do you see what I'm saying? Become a village. Don't just let some guy walk up and say, that's my kid. And the poor child is looking behind you like, really? And they're like, shut up, I'll rip you apart if you say anything. Be a village. Yeah. And protect ourselves so that nobody at any time ever feel like they can come here and do this to our children. Right? It is on, folks. It's something. It's something. I kid you not. It's something. It really is tremendous, right? Sex tourism. Who would have thought? This is why I never wanted to talk about it. Forgive me. Forgive me. I did not want to touch the subject because it's something that I feel deeply. I connected with an author from Iowa about 8 years ago, and her own story of how she came to be aware of sex trafficking was something that moved me. And the book, The Heavens Are Telling. I'm going to tell you how to get the book. You got to read this stuff. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You can't make this stuff up. You can't, it's on Amazon. I'm going to go to Amazon and look it up so I can tell it, because the author wrote one book and then they went back and visited the shelter where they had set up, and they looked at the children, right? So in books, and it's called The Heavens Are Telling, right? And I want to tell you about it because it's something that people don't recognize, right? The book is called The Heavens Are Telling. And the author has a few other stories. And I didn't really want to tell the story, to be honest with you. The Heavens Are Telling. All right? So the book is called The Heavens Are Telling, not by it's not music. Oh, Jesus. They're giving me all music. Here's the book. The Heavens Are Telling. It's by B.D. Riehl, R-I-E-H-L. There are 2 books in the series, and the other one is called. You gotta go get this book. I still have it on my iPad, and I kid you not, I was broken when I read this book. I was totally broken. Right? You gotta read this book. You gotta read it. Right? The Heavens Are Telling. And the reason the other one is called The Earth is Full. The Earth is Full. That was the first one, and I thought that was enough. The Earth is Full and The Heavens Are Telling. Make sure you go read these books. It tells the story of sex trafficking in Cambodia and how a 10-year-old girl who was ripped from her family was placed in a brothel at 10 years old, and they followed her till she was 18 and was delivered. Right? So whoever thought. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. This is Harriet Kimmick with Down to Earth.